All right, everybody, we're gonna be real quick. This is gonna be a little different than we're used to on these Zoom calls. I thank you everybody for jumping on here. This is politically neutral. We want to jump into the science, which everybody's concerned about. So we're not gonna spend really any time with pleasantries. We're gonna get right to who everybody is, what you do, where you're from, and then move on to the next person. Obviously, there's a lot of interest. We have invited a few members of the media. We have Adriana Balsiero from the Herald. I think we also invited Jessica Lipscomb from Miami New Times. And we've taken a few questions. We put our email address out for people to ask us questions. North Bay Village had a question. We also have one from the city of Miami as well. I see Commissioner Russell. So we're just going to jump right into it. And I'm going to go just as I see. This is being recorded, so we can disseminate this later. We'll start with the gentleman to my right.
Hey, good afternoon. Eric Sutton. I'm the Executive Director for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Pleasure to be here.
We'll go next to Ms. Wheaton. Elizabeth Wheaton from Miami Beach.
Good afternoon. Elizabeth Wheaton, City of Miami Beach Environment and Sustainability Director.
Teresa Cody.
She's muted.
Sorry about that. I had to find out where to unmute. My name is Teresa Cody, and I'm with Florida Fish and Wildlife. I'm in St. Petersburg.
Okay. Next, Sophie Ringel. Can you?
Hi, my name is Sophie Ringel. I'm the founder of Clean Miami Beach. We're a nonprofit organization.
Noah. Unmute yourself.
Everyone else is welcome that I'm the first one to do that so that you can take cover from me. I'm Noah. I'm the Secretary for the Department of Environmental Protection. I've got Julie Espy also on the phone call, who runs our Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration. And Scott Wagner, that is either the best house library I have seen or the best backdrop I've seen, one or the other. So glad to also have South Florida Water Management District on board.
Okay, so we'll go to Scott Wagner, then we're gonna go to Rachel and Vice Mayor Marvin next. So be ready with the unmutes. Scott Wagner, who are you?
Thank you, Senator Pizzo. I'm Scott Wagner, Vice Chairman of the Governing Board of the South Florida Water Management District.
Rachel.
I'm Rachel Silverstein, the Executive Director and Waterkeeper of a local nonprofit, Miami Waterkeeper.
Marvin Wilmoth, Vice Mayor of North Bay Village.
Let's go to David. DD.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Dave Dobler. I'm co-founder of the nonprofit organization volunteercleanup.org, chair of the City of Miami Beach Sustainability Committee, and a steering committee member of the Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit.
Okay, and Lee Hefty.
Good afternoon. My name's Lee Hefty. I'm Director of Miami-Dade County's Division of Environmental Resources Management, also known as Durham.
Okay, next we're going to go to Representative Michael Grieco.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Michael Grieco coming to you live from South Beach. And it's good to see everybody here. And I can assure you that Wagner did not read any of those books.
Okay. Sorry, bringing back up our screen. Go ahead. Let's go to, we have Mayor Wagar's here.
Hey everyone, Crystal Wagger, Mayor of Miami Shores.
And then we have J.K. Espy.
Hi, I'm Julie Espy. I'm with the DEP's Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration.
Blalock. You want on Twitter in this?
Yeah, Adam Blaylock, Deputy Secretary, DEP, Ecosystems Restoration.
Okay, Seth.
Hi, everybody. I'm Seth Bloomgarden, Chairman of Surfrider Foundation, Miami.
Ralph Rosado.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ralph Rosado. I'm Village Manager for North Bay Village. Thank you, Senator Pizzo and Representative Grieco for organizing this.
We're skipping those. No pleasantries. Theo.
Hi, I'm Teo Kune. I'm the co-founder of Senate for the Sea.
And you're going to be our guy that's in the car for this Zoom call. We need one of those too. We need the mute and the Zoom call guy in the car. Commissioner Russell, and then we're going to go to Irila.
Hey there, Miami Commissioner Ken Russell. I'm the Commissioner for all of the waterfront of the City of Miami, and I'm also a board member here at Cross Science Museum with their Director of Animal Health.
I need to get this on Facebook. Okay, and let's go to Irila.
Hi, everyone. Irela Bagué. I am a steering committee member for the Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit. Also, the past chair of the famed now Biscayne Bay Task Force and a former governing board member for the South Florida Water Management District under Governor Bush.
Okay, Kate Stein.
Hi, I'm Kate Stein. I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Officer for Surfside.
Okay, excellent. And I see Adriana is on here from the Miami Herald. And let's make sure we have another page. I apologize. We just drove into Tallahassee, so we're doing this kind of ourselves here. And we have Deanne Miller.
Good afternoon, Deanne Miller, DEP Communications Office.
Okay, Evelyn Trammell.
Hi, Evelyn Trammell from City of Sunny Isles Beach. I'm assistant to the city manager.
Excellent. Okay, let's get started. Noah, do you want to take us away? Noah from the Department of Environmental Protection.
Just trying to catch me on my mute again. I appreciate it, Senator. Well, thank you for calling us together. I know that's a bit of pleasantry, but I think well-deserved. One of the things that's always a pleasure working in Southeast Florida especially is that there's a really good group of stakeholders that care about the resource, want to share information, which is always key when you've got a environmental challenge, is making sure that we're aware of it, making sure we're sharing information, comparing notes, and quickly figuring out what next steps are. I'll just go through my week and say, I think it was probably about the same time I saw a Miami Herald article, heard from my own staff, and then heard from Rachel, who I can see on the screen right now, with the River Keeper, about fish kills, and just a question of, hey, are we sharing information? Do we know what's going on? I know that fish kills have occurred before, but this seems like it might be expanding, and let's make sure we know what's going on. And so I would say the way it works in Florida, we've got a really good team of natural resource protection agencies. I'm just here on this call with Eric Sutton, who runs the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, to see Lee Hefty also on, who runs the local county Environmental Protection Agency, and then myself, who works for the state Environmental Protection Agency, all out in the water, sharing notes. Really, in these instances, I'd turn it over maybe to Eric to start. I think his commission deserves credit for really having folks out on the water 24/7. Both for law enforcement protection, but also for science. We are lucky as a state to have FWCC, really world-renowned in the science they do for red tide, other environmental stressors. And so I'd hand it back over to y'all in the Capitol, Senator. And
yeah, so
and
we're gonna go to Eric right now. Eric Sutton.
Good afternoon. So I want to make sure everyone knows that I'm not downplaying fish kills when I tell you what I need to tell you. But given the circumstances that we're seeing in Biscayne Bay, we're not particularly alarmed at present, and here's why. What we know is the fish kills that we see are a result of low dissolved oxygen, which in this particular environment, when the water temperature is very high, which they have been, perhaps somewhat abnormally, or I should say an anomaly. And we also know that there's been some rain events that can flush and stir the bottom up and create even more low dissolved oxygen. But there's another culprit that you all are more than familiar with down there that can't necessarily confirm, but highly suspicious, that these algal mats that consist of the sargassum that we've seen come in can also, through them blocking out light and also decaying, can contribute to low dissolved oxygen. So while it doesn't make it any more pleasant what you're having to deal with, I do want to assure you, and we've analyzed many of the samples that our partners out there have sent, there's no red tide or any harmful algal blooms, which is a good thing, because you all don't deal with those a lot. And if you did, you'd realize that it's a lot a more difficult issue to manage. But so that's the long and short of it. That said, I want to make sure you know that we're going to continue to work with you all. We have an outstanding research institute that I think you all know that you can provide samples and work with. And I'm available too to any of our partners, and certainly you, Senator. So that's the long and short. I'm happy to backfill if necessary.
Let's go to Lee Hefty at Miami-Dade Durham, and then we're going to go to Rachel, because we're going to go back and forth here. Go ahead. Lee Hefty from Miami-Dade Durham.
Thank you, Senator. So here in Dade County, we actually manage an ambient surface water quality program. We've had it for actually over 40 years now. And this week was the week we were out collecting our samples. So it was very opportune for us to be out there. And as Eric mentioned, what my staff observed were very low dissolved oxygen levels, warm water. So having a fish kill in those conditions is not surprising, but it's still shocking for us because, Biscayne Bay is such a beautiful resource. We're not used to seeing that kind of phenomenon down here. So whenever it happens, it is disconcerting. So we did collect those samples for the harmful algal bloom. We did send them to FWC. It's great to hear the results that we didn't detect that. It wasn't necessarily suspected based upon the conditions, but we had to confirm that. We're going to be looking at chlorophyll levels. Those samples are in our laboratory. It takes some time to get that, but just the physical data indicates that there were low levels of oxygen. The temperature of the water was much warmer. My staff also observed during the early part of the week that there were some particularly low tides, so that all those things may have conspired to cause the fish kill. I think, on a longer term view, what we're looking at is how can we work to make Biscayne Bay more resilient to these kinds of things. We know that this particular basin over the last 8 years had a significant seagrass die off. That's disconcerting. Myself, I'm past 30 years with Durham. I used to actually go monitor the seagrasses in that basin in the early 90s. And so when I heard that the seagrasses were dying off, I went 2 summers ago to see it myself. It was very disheartening. So we're looking at a lot of different ways to help manage the challenges that Biscayne Bay has with stormwater runoff, nutrient loading. It's not an easy one-size-fits-all. We're going to have to work from multiple fronts.
Lee, let me ask you a question before I move on to Rachel. So anecdotally, even you personally, you're not going to argue with the reality that we have seagrass depletion. We have basically decimated. The bay has changed even in your adult lifetime, and there are contributing factors that we must immediately identify and take remedial measures, correct?
I would agree. It's definitely different than it's been historically. In my own,
we didn't invite anybody that denies anything on this call. All right, good. Rachel, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to provide a little bit of the perspective, and Lee touched on this, but I want to be really careful of categorizing this as like a normal summertime fish kill for Florida. This is absolutely unprecedented for Biscayne Bay. Last summer, we did have a small fish kill in this area, but all of the scientists from the various agencies and universities that I've spoken with who have been studying fish in Biscayne Bay for decades have never seen anything like this. And I think what makes this so unprecedented is the size and the area of the fish being affected. So it's not just, it wasn't just on Monday and it wasn't just in one little area of the park, but it seems to be pretty widespread across the bay, reaching out, even into the middle of the bay, which I'm sure Todd from FIU who's been out there and his team has been out there collecting the data that we've been looking at. So he can speak to this too, but also seems to be, lasting a long time. So we're still even today seeing reports of fish gasping for air near the surface, congregating together. These animals are trying to find air and they aren't able to swim away. So a lot of the fish that we're seeing caught up in this are species that we would expect to be able to flee from these poor conditions, like barracuda even we've seen in the mix. So those are very fast fish that you think would be able to escape. So whatever's happening is happening over a wide area and it's happening likely very quickly. It does appear to be, low dissolved oxygen as the culprit here, but I think when we're talking about what causes low dissolved oxygen levels in bodies of water, that, it does happen more when it's hot, but you have to have these conditions in Biscayne Bay of having too much nutrient pollution getting into the water. And I think that's the missing piece here that we really need to be focusing on, because the nutrients that are getting into the bay are essentially fertilizing the algae, causing the algae to grow. We have, as well as too much bacteria in the water. All those things are sucking up the oxygen, and that's not leaving enough oxygen for fish. When the water gets warm, it holds less oxygen, and that's why this happens more often in the summer when the water gets really hot. But in Biscayne Bay, it gets hot every summer and we don't always have fish kills. So, I think that the different factor here is that particularly in this part of the bay where we have seen the seagrass die off precipitously over the last 3 years, as Lee mentioned, it's not a coincidence that those things are happening together and they have the same root cause, and that is nutrient pollution. So where's that coming from? It's getting into the water from sewage leaks, from septic tanks, from stormwater runoff, and from fertilizer use. So I think urgent action needs to be taken to remedy those, the infrastructure pieces and the legislative pieces to fix the fertilizer. But the infrastructure investment needs to be made to fix the stormwater, the sewage system, and get rid of septic tanks that are really heavily and concentrated in this area.
Rachel, I'm going to go to Eric real quick, but I just want to interject one thing. And this is, like we said, politically neutral and all that stuff, but it's the worst kept secret that one of the biggest issues for me, and that I talked about to get to this post, was the fact that we have 92,000 plus septic tanks in Miami-Dade County, high water table rising. Mayor Wagar is on the phone here. Her entire village of Miami Shores is on septic. All of Biscayne Park, all of El Portal, 1,255 homes and businesses in North Miami Beach are on septic. High water table rising within 6 inches of septic drainage fields. And we have a consent decree with the Miami-Dade County since 2013 to rip up, repair, and replace an aging, antiquated infrastructure because we don't have gravity, so we're using these sewer pumps that fail, on occasion. And regardless of whether or not you're in a small little studio apartment or a massive penthouse or on Indian Creek, we're flushing our toilets into the same broken, antiquated, awful sanitary sewer system that has to be changed. And I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, we're not using best practices, but I'm going to go to Eric, and then we're going to go to Dr. Kroll from FIU.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure you understand. I'm not downplaying the, what it means to you all in Biscayne Bay. We don't see it that often in Biscayne Bay. I think more what I'm trying to convey is that when we look at the culprits here, it's nothing. It's not an unknown necessarily, which could be problematic, right? If we couldn't identify what the situation is. So, we and I know Noah at DEP work closely with you all, and we agree. Water quality improvements is a common goal throughout all of us. So, I didn't want to come across as insensitive, but certainly I'm relieved that it's not some sort of harmful algal bloom that get in there. And it's something that we can explain. So that I just thank you for letting me reply to that. So,
Dr. Todd, not like a red tide or something along those lines.
Dr. Todd Kroll from FIU.
Yeah, I'm the executive director of the Institute of Environment at FIU. So I don't disagree with anybody what anyone said. This is a perfect storm of really warm surface temperatures, about 6 degrees higher than typical in July. Almost twice as much rain in July, which flushed a lot of really bad stuff from the sources we all know about. The one thing I do wonder about is the perplexing lack of avoidance behavior of the fish. We have places where there are hundreds of fish gasping for breath, and they're not swimming 4 meters to water that's full of oxygen. And I am completely perplexed as to why their behavior is such as it is. By the end of tonight, we will be able to give you guys an isopleph map that will show you the plume of red, which is where all the low sagging oxygen is. But what is remarkable about that is you'll see that within meters of that plume we will show you, and I gave you a glimpse of that in an email I sent earlier today, there's plenty of oxygen in the water. The fish aren't swimming over there, and that's got me bothered.
Are you hypothesizing that they're so disoriented from lack of oxygen?
Well, I don't know. We're going to have to get some pathologists in and look at some of the fish. I mean, it seems like an odd thing. We also, the chlorophyll is rising quickly. That's going to be a downward spiral because at night, algae suck up oxygen just like everything else. The dead fish bodies is going to be a problem. We got to get local citizens to remove the fish from their seawalls. People should go out in their own backyards if they live on the bay, take the bodies out if they can. I know the counties and cities are doing that. But I don't suspect harmful algal blooms of any kind, but I don't know what's causing this weird behavior.
Lee from Durham, let me go back to you for a quick second. We're getting a number of questions from people, from municipalities and from individuals about the collection of fish basically in the back. So we want them to document and report it to FWC, but cities like North Bay Village, even Miami Shores, a number of residential properties that front the bay, it's a pretty heavy burden to be collecting. And here's a very basic question, pleading my ignorance. What do you do with the fish? And how do we pay for it?
If an individual resident picks up the fish, they should bag it and throw it in their garbage. The garbage will get picked up and hauled away. I know we've received some calls from folks asking if anybody's going to go out and start picking up all the fish. I had my staff out today doing reconnaissance And they're reporting to me, and just to kind of get back to what Rachel had said earlier about the extent of this, I will tell you that the observations regarding this phenomenon we're seeing in the Julia Tuttle Basin and the Venetian Causeway Basin. So when we talk about Biscayne Bay and the Bay, the Bay is a really large water body that includes many, many miles. We're not seeing this kind of activity in other parts of Biscayne Bay, South Biscayne Bay. It's these isolated basins, and in particular the Julia Tuttle Basin, where we had that significant seagrass loss over the last 8 years. That's where we're finding all the dead fish floating. My staff were out there today. They're not reporting to me that they're seeing large accumulations of fish at this point. And the challenge is going to be, it would be great if we could have gotten them out of the system, removed them quickly, but this happens so infrequently, there isn't a mechanism established to quickly respond and go collect all the dead fish. So what was mentioned by Dr. Crow, if everybody picked up a few fish, that would really help. If they're accumulating on your shoreline, like the city parks should go clean up the shorelines. If there's county parks along the water, they should clean up the shorelines. If residents can pick it up and throw it in the garbage, that will help remove it, because it would be difficult to go out and clean up the entire bay, to have one workforce trying to do that.
Have you taken a look at whether or not, just as a preliminary measure, whether or not there's been any sanitary shoreline breaks, pump station failures, anything? You know, I'm from North Miami Beach, where, you know, we had a fail and it went on for a while with, and you guys are, not fault of you, but unable to locate where raw sewage was pumping into the section of Mall Lake for days.
We cannot find a single point source so far. Our reconnaissance is all set up to try to hone in on really hot spots of low oxygen to see if we can't find some kind of source that is more concentrated than other places. Right now, we don't have any direct evidence. I will say that one of the things we hope, and you alluded to this earlier, we still have significant areas and homes that are on septic. I'm hoping to use this catastrophic event as a way to maybe identify some of those neighborhoods where we're getting the higher concentrations of runoff and chemicals to help the cities and stuff prioritize where the dollars go to sort of start this reconstruction thing. So I think we'll get there, but we're certainly designing all of our sampling to look for any leakages or point sources. But right now, we don't see that.
And this is more for everyone to hear, because you literally work and live in the areas that I'm about to talk to in my district and Representative Grieco's district. So like I said before, all of Miami Shores, all of El Portal, all of Biscayne Park, parts of North Miami Beach, and as far south as Pinecrest, if you're joining this call from, you know, down in South Dade, but I'm selfish for our constituents in my district. Those are thousands on septic. The issue is, and I pressed NOAA about this at a committee meeting last year, and he was amenable to it. The DEP has a wonderful program, and this is all I'm going to say about septics, because we'll come back to it later, but DEP has a wonderful program at 50 basis points for municipalities to be able to go ahead and fund these projects from septic to sewer conversion. The problem is, that the limitation is that we have, is that there's an income level of AMI, and there's also a population cap. So Miami Shores doesn't qualify, but El Portal does. And considering the fact that we're all equally contributing to catastrophic consequences and results, I think NOAA will be receptive to this. We'll work this through the legislature, but I think we need to get rid of those caps, because it's best practices to get everybody off septic, especially in an environment with such an environmentally sensitive area. So we're going to work on that. However, the hesitation I get, the resistance I get in the Senate, is I go to the agricultural chair to ask for dollars to do septic to sewer conversion studies specifically for Miami Shores or El Portal or Biscayne Park. And I can't get the dollars because it's hooking up to a county system that not a lot of people have faith in. And so, you know, what you're hooking up to has to be using best practices as well. So I'm committed. I know it's not sexy and it's not popular, but there's a group of us that are committed to ripping up and repairing and replacing whatever we got to do instead of Band-Aids.
And Senator, just to jump in real quick, you know, and to go off what Dr. Kroll was saying, from the work that FWCC and DEP has done already as far as bringing in samples, we don't see any indication, as Eric said, of an algal bloom. There hasn't been any evidence of a chemical spill or wastewater overflow. There's not a report from or any inspection that we've done from a regulated facility that would suggest it's leading to this. And so again, it sort of leads to the more generalized hot water, low dissolved oxygen, turbidity from water coming into the system. But it's impossible to have this conversation without the other conversation that I think a lot of us have been part of, which is Biscayne Bay is a really special place in Florida. And in many other places in Florida, the department's already been involved in setting up a overarching construct as to how to deal with sources of nutrients, water quality impairments, and make sure that we can have a sustainable water body for the future. Look at Tampa Bay, where we had the Tampa Bay Estuary program. We've had very successful basin management action plans throughout the rest of Florida. Some beginning, some already well through and achieving good results. And I think there's been a rightful discussion in your neck of the woods of, hey, we've got one of the most precious resources in Florida, but we don't really necessarily have that construct set up yet. The governor has, during his term, already secured record funding for water quality. This year, we actually saw for the first time funding specifically dedicated to protect Florida's coral reef system. Even so, $12 million for resilience in coral reefs, but another $10 million specific to working on water quality issues that are challenging Florida's coral reef system, which is essentially this mosaic of sources in Southeast Florida, and how do we really begin to tackle that? At the same time, I know a lot of these people, a lot of the folks on the call have been involved in the Biscayne Bay Task Force and how to move forward. And I would just say on the department's behalf, we're invested to make that a success. We're ready to be a partner. We're ready to bring money to the table because we really think for any conversation about a fish kill, any conversation about an algal bloom, any conversation about red tide in the future, anything else is going to come down to what are we doing as a team to make the future of Biscayne Bay sustainable. And that means we've got to have a really concerted effort that's cemented, that's enduring, that's lasting. And so I'm excited to see hopefully the Biscayne Bay Task Force become formalized and enduring. And just wanted to let you know on behalf of the department, we're invested in making sure that happens. We'd like to be a partner, and we want to make sure that this isn't a one-time conversation about a fish kill, but instead the same group of individuals gets together on a regular basis about coverage of seagrass, goals for what we want to see Biscayne Bay look like for our children 20 years from now into the future.
Okay, I'm just going to, Arella.
Yeah, I just want to
I wanted to chime in. I don't know who was speaking. I don't want to talk, but just to kind of chime into what Noah said, I think we found no evidence that this is related to any kind of acute spill, and it's probably more a chronic issue, which leads right into why we need to form some kind of long-term organization and focus on a long-term program to protect Biscayne Bay. The fact that it is probably more likely chronic than acute. So we need to work together on a long-term strategy to make Biscayne Bay more resilient. And I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that and piggyback what Lee and both Noah have said on behalf of the South Florida Water Management District. I mean, we're here to support each and every state and local agency who's involved in this. And I think it's not shocking to anybody that the water in South Florida is hot in August. I mean, doesn't take a science degree to figure that out. But I do think that when it gets hot, that's where it gets really delicate. And any one of the other factors can tip the oxygen level, tip the scales to create a really depleted oxygen level really quickly. And I think that everything that everybody has talked about is trying to create some sort of resilient program where we're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together to eliminate anything that might tip the scales in the wrong direction. And so I think that sort of comprehensive partnership of all these agencies is something that's critically important.
Okay, I'm gonna, and I think Rachel wants to come back as well. But let me Adriana Brasileiro from Miami Herald. Do you have any questions? Any answers you haven't gotten?
Actually, I do. I'm wondering, considering all these problems that we've seen that they keep happening, this is an unprecedented fish kill, but we've seen mounting problems with the health of Biscayne Bay. Why is it that we don't have a system to monitor the amount of nutrients that get into the bay? I mean, do we have that? Does it work?
We do. This is Lee Hefty with Durham. We do. We've got ambient water quality monitoring where we sample every month for the last 40 years through all of the canals throughout the watershed and out into Biscayne Bay. So we do have a long data set for nutrients that are flowing through the canal system. It's kind of complicated because it's not just the nutrients at any one moment in time. It's the loading of the nutrients over time. So for many, many years, this very basin was receiving nutrients from the canals, but the basin was able to tolerate that. The seagrasses were growing very luxuriantly. The problem is the things had changed to just the right point where they were no longer able to survive through the nighttime respiratory period where they weren't photosynthesizing, and we end up losing acres of seagrass in this basin. And so seagrasses are very important. They protect the water quality. They help sequester nutrients. Once they go, then you start to have a potential shift in the ecology of the bay from something that's seagrass based to more water column algae.
So maybe the data didn't really help inform policy the way it should have over the past few decades. I mean, I'm trying to understand where there was a break maybe in communication.
Adriana, if I may, Lee can speak to this. He's been there a long time, and we'll get him to say what he's got to say. But let me just be very clear with everybody. Nobody that was elected gave a crap about crap going into the water. And some people may have tried, and it fell on deaf ears. And I cannot stress to you enough what deferred maintenance, our environment and our roadways and infrastructure, it's crap. And it needs to be redone and rebuilt, and we're not using best practices. And I'm sure the data was there and ignored. It's not sexy. The can has been kicked down the road for so long on pump stations, on sewer lines, on all of that stuff. And I will tell you that Lee probably drafted a report. Noah probably drafted a report. Eric's probably got a report he drafted. And you basically hand it in, and they were given the information and nobody acted on it. Listen, if you're running for office, it's not sexy to say, I need $3.5 billion from the state of Florida to rip up, repair, and replace sanitary sewer infrastructure. But that's the bottom line. We got to bite the bullet and do it if that's what's necessary. If that's what's causing fish kills and anoxic situations, that's what we have to do. It's not sexy. It's not going to be popular. It's going to hurt and sting economically, but it's what we got to do if it's important to save. Lee, would you disagree with that?
No, but I'd like to chime in. The challenge is that for many years, the nutrients that were reaching the bay were not representing themselves as a problem. So what's happening is, there's many different factors that go into how an ecosystem is resilient or not. And I think we're seeing, especially now with these warmer temperatures and with the loss of the seagrass, now you see that the fish are vulnerable. And in many cases in the southern part of the county where we have a lot of agriculture, there have been high levels of nitrogen going into southern Biscayne Bay, and it hasn't represented itself as a problem. And so and there's many sources of nutrient. We've talked about the sewer system, we've talked about septic systems, but there are land use activity. What we really need is behavioral change on all of our parts individually, in terms of the way we fertilize our lawn, when we wash our cars, when you see those guys blowing the lawn clippings into the street, where do you think it goes? It goes into the storm drain and decomposes and puts nutrients in the bay. When people throw trash on the streets, all of those things add up to nutrients that find their way into aquatic systems, which are not good. So we
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I know that there is a need for a comprehensive, sort of very large solution regarding the infrastructure piece, but there are a number of things that smaller municipalities and larger municipalities could be doing right now to start reducing those nutrients. There's a fertilizer ordinance that Waterkeeper has been at the forefront of pushing, that I know that several cities have adopted. I know that we've adopted here, but we need to start passing legislation that's easy enough to implement, but that will start addressing these issues. Because I think at the moment we're all waiting for the big fix, and the big fix has not come yet. So fertilizer ordinances, we need to reduce our use of plastic. I'm happy to share any information. It's funny, it's very serendipitous. The city of Miami Beach and Betsy Wheaton here started a plastic-free initiative last year. They're seeing success from that. I think there are a number of very, very simple things that we can do from an educational perspective and a low-impact legislative perspective that can start to help address this issue. And I'm happy to share that information.
I think that's a great point. And let me just tell you how the sausage is made behind the scenes. typically there's a bit of back and forth about preemption, local home rule, partisanship, all that stuff. Here's how this is going to work. Noah and Eric, with the help of all of these wonderful organizations with Rachel and Sophie, are going to like put together ideas, and we're going to say, just back off. That's basically what's going to be. So Noah and Eric and Scott Wagner can call the governor and or explain to the governor's office as well. And they'll be, listen, these guys are a lot more receptive than the last crew, okay? And explain the science and say, this is actually detrimental. It's okay. It's not overreaching to make some behavioral changes, to make some restrictions and some ordinance changes. And legislatively, it's more like back off and kind of let the locals control. I'm, cautiously optimistic about 2 bills that have been vetoed in the past year that spoke directly to local home rule issues by this governor. So if the science is, if Noah and Eric and the Rachels of the world and the mayors and commissioners and the Sophies, I agree with you. I mean, listen, if fertilizer is contributing a nutrient level that's detrimental to fish kills and oxygen, just back off. This is what we want to do. It's not an issue to Ocala. I get it. It's not an issue to Gainesville, but it's critical to us.
Senator,
yeah, Irela, go ahead, from Biscayne Bay Task Force.
I just, want to thank you for putting this together. This is precisely the type of approach that we need on a permanent basis, as the secretary alluded to in his comments. Thank you for the shout out for the Biscayne Bay Task Force. We've been working for over a year with many of you that have been on this call who have contributed to a report that I believe Mr. Hefty has right now en route to the mayor, and it just creates a guide and a pathway for everyone, including municipalities, a working relationship with the state. What we found as in the task force is that nobody's talking to, everyone's doing great work and great research and here and there and everywhere and trying to file bills and pass ordinances, but it's not done in a collective manner. So basically we have a hodgepodge of stuff going on, but no one's really coordinating with anybody, even internally at the county. So what we really need is your support to work with the county in this, whatever the commission decides to create, whether it's a board, whether it's another task force, whatever, but on a permanent basis, because it baffles my mind that the Miami River Commission exists, which is one canal that feeds into the Biscayne Bay watershed, which is so vast, but it has more oversight than the Bay. And so we need that. Those are my 2 cents. Please embrace the report, support the report. There's things that the county, the cities, everyone can do immediately to address a lot of the problems. There are many problems. What's wrong with the Bay? Everything. Whose fault is it? Everybody's. That's what I say.
Rep Grieco, chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. This has been, it's been great listening to all the different perspectives, I got to tell you. And from going back to what the senator was talking about funding, going and getting funding for these projects up in Tallahassee, it's challenging enough in non-pandemic times. And then we're going to be going into a session where there aren't really going to be any member projects. We're not going to be seeing, dollars raining down from Tallahassee. And this is going to be another time where I can see myself and Rep. Avila and a few others bringing back what we did last year, which is trying to free up our ability to spend resort tax dollars on water projects. This is something that we tried to do last year. We were fought with tooth and nail, especially by the GMCBB and several other organizations that were tying our hands. And we're talking about millions of dollars that right now we're hamstrung as to how we can spend them locally. And, I'm going to be bringing it back. I know Rep. Avila from Hialeah is going to be doing the same thing. And we need to start looking at unique ways of funding projects, whether it be about septic tanks, whether it be about cleaning projects, whether it just be about general informational campaigns and letting people know that this is an issue that impacts everybody. It's not just environmentalists. So it's just something to keep on your radar. What they're doing in North Bay Village is great. Miami Beach has obviously been a leader statewide and even nationally and internationally when it comes to environmental projects. But it's got to be more than just us folks that are treating the environment as a top priority. We've got to get more people engaged in these everyday struggles.
Did Jessica Lipscomb join us? I see Jessica on there. Okay. Commissioner Russell?
Yes, Senator, thank you. So I wanted to speak to the fertilizer ordinance and the preemption issue. We passed the fertilizer ordinance in the city of Miami with the help of Waterkeeper back in April. And it has teeth to it. It actually can give citations on private property for improper fertilizing. But we're not going to do that. We're not going to go into someone's private property and start writing tickets when we see them sprinkling fertilizer. What we really need behind this legislation is an education campaign that makes difference, you know, that happens around an event like this, that bring people's attention to the ordinance itself. The ordinance being there by itself doesn't do anything. And it's not about police and tickets and citations. We really need help with an education campaign and the dire consequences of not following the ordinance.
Senator, this is Lee Hefty with Dade County. If I could chime in to kind of tag on to what Irela was saying. So what's recommended in the Biscayne Bay Task Force is multiple elements that includes developing sort of an overarching governance structure. But within that, we look at very different elements. Water is one of them, but education is another really important element. And I think it would be really important if we all work together on developing an education and outreach campaign to help change behavior on the individual level, because that is really the best way, working together as an entire community of 2.5 million to almost 3 million people to try and save Biscayne Bay.
Rachel?
Yeah, if I can just chime in here for a second, I totally agree. And I think we're getting to the root of the problem here, which is talking about solutions for the nutrient pollution that's harming Biscayne Bay. And that's, again, the septic system, stormwater system, sewage, and fertilizer. And I think, doing outreach and education, which we actually have funding from the city of Miami to do education and outreach on their fertilizer ordinance that we helped create with them, which is now the strongest in the state, which is fantastic. But it is going to take more than individual citizens changing their own behavior, because we do have major infrastructure needs here that need to be addressed. And so again, I know that the septic system and the sewage system and the stormwater system are all big ticket items, and funding is particularly scarce right now. But perhaps we could think about this as some kind of, infrastructure stimulus investment in funding and getting people to work. And these projects will not only save Biscayne Bay and thus save our economy that depends on Biscayne Bay, but these projects will also make us more resilient to sea level rise and really allow us to continue living here for decades and hopefully centuries to come. So these are, in my mind, really non-discretionary spending items. They're things that do absolutely need to happen. The fertilizer ordinance piece, absolutely, but these infrastructure pieces are critical. And one other thing I want to just draw a distinction between that we've been getting a lot of questions from the public about is the difference between algae blooms that happen when we have too many nutrients in the water, and then that algae uses up all the oxygen, and when the water gets hot, then we have these fish kill die-offs, and harmful algae blooms that we've also been talking about too, that have more of a toxic component, and there's certain species of algae essentially that are contributing there. So while we really don't.
Rachel, we lost you for a second. Now you're back on.
Oh, we are concerned, and we are having, have had a lot of evidence of, can you still hear me?
Yes.
We are concerned and have been seeing a lot of evidence of algae blooms forming in Biscayne Bay, where we used to have a really low nutrient environment where we didn't have these issues. So as the data that Durham has been collecting for a long time has shown over decades, this increase in nutrient levels, reaching what NOAA scientists analyzed and published a study this year saying that, hey guys, we are at a tipping point. And if we continue putting pollution into Biscayne Bay, we are going to see really negative effects. And lo and behold, we're seeing algae blooms, we're seeing the seagrass die, and we're seeing the fish be suffocated literally overnight. So this is, and I totally agree, this is a chronic problem. This is, I think, been these pollution inputs going into the bay over decades. And we finally hit a threshold where the bay is just not supporting life anymore and is turning into a dead zone before our eyes. And we're getting reports of people smelling sulfur. That's likely the hydrogen sulfide that's being created from the low oxygen conditions. So we can literally smell the bay turning into a dead zone here. And Todd can probably weigh in on that too.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask everybody one question, and we're going to go back to Dr. Todd Krall as well. But one question that I'm going to have for everybody: which is sort of what's on your immediate wish list. I mean, the question you're getting the most, the information you want the most. You know, a lot of cities, you guys are going to need flow charts to give out to people information, who to call, you know, all those types of things. So just everybody just be prepared to sort of ask what your ask is right now, because I mean, the governor's office yesterday was immediately responsive to let us know what you need. So, and we have Noah here and Eric, so we're at the top. We have everyone that works so hard and has great followings on this. So this is the time to ask, and then we'll continue the discussion. Whatever it is you need, the greatest perk of this job is getting you an answer and getting you the person to call you back and get you the answer immediately. That's what we do. That's how we work. So there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of other things like this. So we're going to do this. We're going to go right from the Bay to the Capitol, okay? And get everybody everything needs, upwards, backwards, and sideways. And we're not going to do all this, you know, dancing around. We're going to get it done, whatever needs to be done. So let me go to Mayor Wagar, Miami Shores.
Thank you. One of the things in our community, we have a Bay community, and we're seeing a lot of pollution back up against the homes along that bay. It is my understanding that several years ago, there was an effort to come in and dredge and get that trash out of the bay, and it's been discontinued. And so you see this huge backup of plastic. We are putting in place certain ordinances around plastic and fertilizer and all those things, but we need help with the bay itself, one, in cleaning it and getting it cleaned up. It hasn't happened. And two, I don't know who to call. It used to be the county, is my understanding, and the county is no longer doing it. So I don't even know how to resolve that issue in and of itself, let alone our septic issues, which we cannot afford. We don't have the tax base for that. So my issue is, one, cleanup of the bay that backs up along our residential area along the bay, along the Biscayne Bay Boulevard within our city. And two, I don't even know where to start with our septic system and trying to go from septic to sewer. I have no idea where to start.
So Mayor, the next couple months and into session, you and Noah are going to become really good friends, because he needs to help Miami Shores with septic conversion. Let's go to Kate Stein from Surfside.
Thank you, Senator. I think the thing that would be most helpful for us is, to Arella's point, first of all, coordination that brings in, you know, obviously everyone who's working on things locally, whether it's academia, nonprofits, local governments, the county. It would be really helpful if there were some sort of central hub where we could all find updates on what's going on and understand how the different agencies and players are working together. And then also for situations like this fish kill, and also just in general, I think also to Arella's point and to what other people here have said, the need for consistent, clear communications. So I don't know for this particular event, if there's some way that we could have standard, you know, e-blast that we can share, or like a 2-minute PSA that all the different communities can put on their, you know, their social media and their TV channels, things like that, that really help people understand why this is occurring and then what the long-term plan is for fixing it. That would be extremely helpful right now.
Excellent idea.
And those PSAs, 30 seconds or less. Like, it needs to be quick.
To hold people's attention. Vice Mayor Rule, you want to chime in? Then we're going to go to Seth from Surf Rider, and then Sophie. Okay, let's go to Seth from Surf Rider.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much. And I really appreciate you putting this together. Wholeheartedly agree with what everybody's saying about some of the contributing factors that are going on there. And I think we definitely need to work together in a collaborative effort to fix some of those things. I've been getting a lot of feedback, though, from folks wondering why, particularly as it relates to this event, the speed, intensity, and duration of the event seem to be very perplexing. And I'd like to ask particularly those that are out there running specialized tests. We clearly understand the nutrient density issue and the low oxygen issue, but number one, have we been doing other specific tests as it relates to industrial chemicals, toxins, other solvents that might have had a major impact to cause even what we're hearing from from the professor about the fish behaving strangely, or from Rachel about the large fish not being able to get out of the area. The fact that this came on so quickly is what seems to be bewildering many of us. Adding to that, and I'd like to make sure to hear from the science-based community who's doing the tests. Adding to that, I'd also be curious to find out, yes, there are a number of long-term actions that need to be taken from the legislative front and the bureaucratic front. But is there something, because we are in such a dire emergency right now, is there something that could be done on an emergency basis that we can put into play right now so that we don't suffer further critical decline?
All right, I'm gonna direct this question to Noah, and then we are coming up on the end of the hour. I hope everyone's been interested, so we can do this again and regroup and continue the discussion. Noah, take that one, please.
Sure. So we certainly are sampling and looking for, again, whether there was an industrial permit, wastewater, other issues, and have not seen any sign of that whatsoever. I think you've seen or heard today relatively the same answer across the board from academia to local government to state government of it appears to be the hot water temperatures, either turbidity, all that leading to dissolved oxygen. You also have heard across the board acknowledgement that Biscayne Bay has got a lot of challenges that need to be taken care of. And just because we don't have a smoking gun related to a particular permit or a particular source for a fish kill doesn't mean that we don't need to take care of that problem. A lot of conversations coming from the Biscayne Task Force talked about the Tampa Bay Estuary program, which is a famous action that happened in Florida, is really known around the world, where in a similar situation, probably in a less favorable time. This is back in the 1990s when the Estuary program came together in Tampa Bay, where the water quality in the bay was atrocious. They had lost significant seagrass coverage, and the local community came together with DEP and others and set goals. And today they exceeded those goals.
So Eric's whispering in my ear that that's a really, really good program, and it really, really works.
Yeah. And it's all about local.
I don't know if it's a sinister smile. So
I would say this, it's a really good example. I think the Biscayne Bay Task Force used that as a model and discussed how do you adapt that to sort of the Miami-Dade situation and make it successful. I think you've got a proposal before the county. We'd urge you to look at that. From the state side, what we have right now is a governor who's providing us all the resources we could ever ask for, right? More resources into water quality and the environment than we've ever had as an agency.
Okay, so
our direction is clear. We can enforce, right? And we will. When a problem exists, we'll enforce, we'll fine, and we'll fix the problem. That's not the best solution. The best solution is on the front end, setting goals locally, and making sure you can reach those. It's easy enough for us on the back end to come in and fine, prosecute, and fix. It's much better to have sort of a local collaborative effort and really encourage you to do that.
Okay. So is it fair to say we have the commitment of the state of Florida when we come up with what the best ideas, best practices in the short term and the long term? We have the full faith, credit, and support of the state government and the state agency to move forward.
Yes, I'm looking forward to being a member of whatever the local task force is that y'all create, and hope that it happens soon, and hope that this same group is meeting again without a fish kill, but meeting again to chart the path forward for Biscayne Bay within the next couple months.
Okay, and let me just ask the immediate, because a bunch of people have asked, even my kids, how about aerators or any other type of machines or artificiating any kind of localized environment to help, because people are seeing suffering? Is any of that plausible?
So I'm gonna hand that over to a marine specialist, either Eric or someone else.
Yeah, so this is Todd. It's funny, Rachel and I have been on the phone all day today with industrial aquaculture companies, Xylem up there in Tampa. We're looking at every possible way of trying to bring in large-scale aeration equipment. The Frost Museum has already put a few aeration cylinders in place. We're replacing the oxygen tanks as we speak. But it's a really sad state of affairs, right? We're treating Biscayne Bay like we do an aquarium in our living room. So, we're doing our best, and we're going to have to look for bigger, better, perhaps wind or solar generated turbines that can sit out there and be moved into areas. Rachel was talking about algal blooms, and I'm watching our live data from our buoy system as we speak. Chlorophyll A just doubled over the last 4 hours, higher than yesterday, which will mean we're going to have a really bad night tonight. The other thing I want to say about state level funding and us all coming together, in February, we put together a legislative budget request to the Board of Governors and the governor to create the Greater Biscayne Bay Health Program. It was patterned after Tampa, it was patterned after Chesapeake Bay, and that was approved. And it just happened to be a really crappy year, no pun intended, to ask for that level of funds. But that would have created the kernel of funding that we could all build around, including a sentinel of water quality units driving up and down the coast, looking for predictive data that would say, uh-oh, we've got an impending problem. So we'll keep trying that. I have no doubt the governor would have supported that if it wouldn't have happened to be this year, right? I mean, it got reviewed really well.
Listen, the West Coast got $18 million for red tide research, $3 million a year over 6 years, and they deserved it and they need it, and it's great research. Millions of dollars have gone for Lake Okeechobee. But what I'm hearing from Noah and from Eric is we got to come forward with a good plan, and we'll find the money for it. But we got to have the plan and the process in place.
Well, and I just want to say, in my 20 years of experience around the state, from Sarasota to Tampa, now statewide, and Charlotte Harbor, these national estuary program models, they work. And they work because if you look on this screen right now, you have all of the intellect and expertise you need, right? But it gets very overwhelming. One of the most difficult things I've seen is to get people all together and to work together and develop those local goals. And once you get those local goals, it doesn't matter what letters after your name. It's a nonpartisan issue. It always is. But it's important for the community. And I've seen it in like Noah said, in Tampa Bay. They were facing a situation very similar, but that NEP structure of getting people together and setting the goals lets them prioritize so that you can eat this elephant one bite at a time.
Is the secret to have a task force that outlives a term limit of a particular politician? I mean, to be honest, should it be a 10-year program so it outlives anybody who's serving on a commission or on a state level? I see your railers nodding your head violently yes. I'm being serious. This program, whatever we come up with, we're presumably doing for our children and for a legacy interest for the next generation. This task force, or whatever it is, should far outlive anyone's political office.
Well, given the scope of your problem, I think you're not going to have to worry about it going away anytime soon as far as the task force.
We want to establish something that can't be closed, shut down, or terminated, not like on a year. We don't want to have to like beg every year for the funding to keep it going for another year on a shoestring budget, but a 10-year plan that comes with.
Well, the funding, what I've seen, the funding will fluctuate, and it depends on, a larger economics. Sometimes the locals will have to pick up more, sometimes the states, sometimes the feds, and sometimes even private partnerships. And so really, number one, establishing goals, and then, like Noah said, backfill to meet those.
Yeah. And Senator, I would jump in and just say, thanks to the budget you helped pass, my agency enjoys a better water quality budget than it ever has in its history. And so we've got resources. We've got a governor committed to it. We've got a legislature committed to it. The thing that I think would be really helpful to us as an agency is that local collaborative that y'all are so close to having formed to get that done and not look back. And we'd be excited to be part of that.
Okay. Can everybody by show of hands agree that we should do this again soon? Okay. All right. Okay, Blaylock was a little late on that one. Any other questions before we shut down? This was just an introduction. It's a unified front to show that we're all in this and we're all neutral but committed. Representative Grieco, anything?
No, listen, I mean, this is great. I mean, obviously this is the first step. Senator Pizzo and I obviously prioritize water quality and the environment locally, and we've been partners. I've known him prior to politics, but to see all these parties getting together, most of whom I consider friends and folks I've worked with in the past. To see everybody coming together, this is really great. But we need to take the momentum, take the recent bad news and use it to our advantage to make this a priority and to get the word out to people who have not prioritized the environment and our water quality in the Bay.
Listen, I've taken the executive director hostage here in the Capitol in Tallahassee until we get what we want. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. We're going to do this again. We're going to post this. Vice Mayor, did you want to say anything? We're good?
No, we're good. I just
right.
need to see.
Guys, thank you. We'll be back again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to give you a map. So there's 34 cities in Miami. Okay. There are 5 state senators.